Welcome to Golf Industry Guru and the Gig Podcast, where we interview the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. On today's episode, you will learn some proven real-world solutions that'll help you and your team solve some of your biggest golf business challenges. So stick around for some tips, tools, and training to get you, your people, and your business powered on. Here's your host, James Kronk.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Gig Podcast on Golf Industry Guru Radio, should I call it? Network? Global Entertainment Corporation? I don't know, whatever it is, but you're listening to a Gig Podcast. And if you're listening to a Gig Podcast, then the reason is because you want to be better. You want to be a better manager. You want to be a better trainer of your team. You want to be a better motivator. You want to have happier members. You want to make your club more money. What I do know is that the people that have joined Gig Nation so far are those individuals that are committed to constant improvement. And today's guest lives his life every day on improving managers and employees in the club business and leaders in the club business be better. And I'm excited to have him back. We have Kevin MacDonald with us again from Clarity Success Coaching, from the Extraordinary Leader Program, from the coaching department. My goodness, from all kinds of things. He's got more hats on than I do. So it's wonderful to have Kevin back in our studio. And Mr. MacDonald, welcome to the Golf Industry Guru Podcast for a second time.
It is good to be back. I'm thrilled to be here, James. Thanks so much.
And unbelievably, our viewers don't know this, but you and I both had to be wearing the same shirts as we did last time, for goodness sake. So
how do they know? Well, they don't know that.
How do they know?
That was just coincidence.
It's a total coincidence. So we don't. There's a reason why we don't video these things. Yeah. But Kevin, thanks so much for sharing your time with me and with us, because there's some great lessons. There's some great lessons to be taught, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you in this podcast today, which is about things that you've witnessed, learned, heard, come across. That you think is our traits, our skills, our wisdom, wise lessons for people that want to. And we're going to actually. I'm going to ask you this first. I was going to say people that want to be successful in the business, but which always gets me to my first question, which is what is success, right? That's the first thing you got to start with, obviously. So maybe what I'll do is I will ask you that, like. So, Kevin, you obviously coach people with your Extraordinary Leader Program in various different ways, in managers, and we talked about that in our previous podcast. And I invite our listeners after today to go back and make sure you listen to that podcast about Kevin's Extraordinary Leader Program. But Kevin, I guess my question is for the people that come to you. What do you talk about when you talk about what is success, and how do you want to move forward? Is that how things start with your conversations in a bit?
Yeah, you know what? They all start differently because it depends where the person's coming from. If they're coming with a specific problem or challenge they're facing or opportunity that they have in front of them. And some people are just coming because they're always just wanting to find that place where they can do something different and learn in a different way. So there's no one way it all happens, but I think what you just, you started out with what is success. And, in our program, we started out with what's your vision, because if you don't know where you want to go, then it really doesn't matter how you get there, I guess. But, what is success? And it's different for every person. And, having people understand and own the fact that they can choose what success is. And, I was just on a call with a young student and we were talking about his future. And I just said, hey, make sure it's your future that you're focused on, not the future that you think either your parents or somebody else thinks you should do. Or worse than that is what you believe others would think that you should do. You don't even know, and you're putting yourself in those limits. So get clear on what you want and figure out what success is for you, I think that is a piece of the essence of what we do. I have a saying that, success is really knowing what you want or need and then knowing how to ask for it. That's very simplistic, but I think a lot of people don't know what they need or want. And so that, they just default to what everybody else tells them they should want or they should need. Mm-hmm. And then if those people who do figure out this is what I want or need, then they may not know how to, connect the resources and the opportunities and the education and all the things to get what they need. So you have to know how to ask for it as well as knowing what you want. So that's the start of it for me. And, it started when I, as a club manager, I wish I had a coach when I was a club manager. I wish this existed when I was in club management, and because I know I could be so much better than I was, and not that I was not good, but I just know there were some things that got in the way of my success that I wish I had have known about and been able to navigate those waters.
Let me start by, I loved in our last podcast when you were talking about, what I got out of that conversation, Kevin, was that we don't do, and I say this every once in a while, but that we don't do enough work on the business of ourselves, the business of you, that whole kind of, like you said, you got to be a great leader you got to be great with yourself to be able to expect greatness of others and that kind of stuff, right? So looking inwardly, you were saying, right. And so not to go to negative town, but in the world of what we live in the club world, what do you think are some of the kind of key challenges that every manager kind of has to overcome or is going to face? I mean, I believe we live in a very unique world. I believe that, I always say, like, there's a reason why they call it the club business, the golf business, yet we go whack a white ball around, or we go, kind of hit a tennis ball around, where it's a sport and a hobby. For those that manage a private club, they've got 800 bosses. Sometimes they got 6 bosses in those, they change every 2 years. There's all, we have very little measurements in our world. There's very little consistency. It's like, there's 35,000 golf courses around the world. It's almost like 35,000 independent operators around the world. So we really do have a unique world that we live in. And so in your 21 years as a coach, what do you think are some of those common kind of challenges that managers face, no matter what role that they're in?
What a great question. I think there are external challenges. There are things that happen. COVID happened. 2008, the economy changed. Whatever things are pressures on our businesses, competition, whatever they are, there are external things that happen. And what fascinates me is how, during those times of those external conflicts, there's some people that thrive and there's some people that fail. And it's the same, they got the same challenge. They got the same external things that are coming toward them. And I think back of those external things, whether it's, lawsuits or HR problems or whatever you faced when I was a club manager, I think what I could really go back to and say that they all had an internal element to them that would either make me successful or unsuccessful. So in other words, there were things that were inside me as I took in all these challenges or these opportunities, and depending on what I did with me is how that I could then handle them. And so there will be challenges, there will be external things that are coming towards us, and how does James look at it? How does this competitor look at it? It's two different things. And so why is that? And when I was sort of thinking, you sort of tweaked me, I think a couple of weeks ago, and you said, well, what were the challenges when you were a club manager that, you faced? And I could go back to very literal, we built clubhouses and we had we had all sorts of disciplines coming together and all those things that happened. But the biggest challenges or problems I faced were internal. And I think maybe this is more of a private club thing than a pay for a pay-as-you-play sort of place. But, for me, one of the biggest anchors around me is that I took things personally. And, you're in a very personal business. And, we had 1,100 members at my club. And, if there were 5 of them that really didn't like me or were unhappy all the time, I spent an inordinate amount of time trying to please those 5 people. And because I took it personally, I really thought it was my job to make everybody happy. And I think when I learned that there's some people who gain their happiness from being unhappy. And so why should I take that away from them? But there's some people that don't want to be happy, and no matter what you do, it will never be enough, because that is their power over you. And I never sort of figured it out that, hey, wait a second, I got to allow people to be who they are, but I'm not going to not be who I am. And the more I would take things personally, the more defeated I would feel, or more anger, resentment, and those things that would come into my world. They took away from my brilliance as a club manager. And, it's such a simple thing. And people say, well, you have to take things personally. You have to care, but because you're not happy doesn't mean it's about me. Quite frankly, it could be that you're just an unhappy person. I will do my best to give the great results that you deserve, but I will not, if you're predisposed to being unhappy, no matter what I do, then I can't give my soul to you, sort of thing. And I did that, and I paid a price for it. And, so when I have allowed people to be who they are, and allowed them to, not react to any not negative comments they would say to me or about me, that really changed. That, okay, I see what their challenge is. I'm going to do my best, but there's some problems I won't solve for them, but I'm not going to let it affect me negatively. So that was one of the big things. Obviously, a lot of people come and talk to me about work-life balance. That is a big thing in our industry. And I always say to people, I try to teach people to be their best. And I always say to them, does your club deserve your best? They would say yes. Does your family deserve your best? They would say yes. Does your health deserve your best? They would say yes. How about your passions, the things you love to do in life? Do they deserve your best? Yes. I said, but in our industry, there's a bit of a default setting that a lot of people don't give their best. They give their all. And they have a belief that if I give more time, if I give more effort, if I give more energy, then they'll be happy with my result. And, but I can tell you countless examples of people who gave their all and, have health issues, or, the family broke up, or they have no time and no passion, no joy in life. And so to me, that's not success. Going back to your point, is that there has to be a way to figure out how to give your best and not your all. And, so that's what I work with people, is to really define that and to get clear and reframe what things, we continually add more things that we have to do. James, when I left club management, there was no social media. There was, I didn't have a cell phone. It was easy for me to have boundaries, that nobody called me at home. When I was at work, I was at work. When I was at home, I was at home. And I was really quite good at separating those two. But I think now there's so many people that they're sleeping with their phones. They're taking texts at 3 a.m. And I talked to a young man on his one day off, with his family, at Sunday night at 7:00, somebody didn't like their hamburger, and they expected him to call them right away to talk about it. I mean, there's got to be boundaries. There's got to be a way to be extraordinary in your job and not give your all to it. And so that, I think that's something that is a big concern for people, that, it affects your sustainability in the industry, quite frankly. And it's something I am very proud of, that I can, when I see people who get a handle on that and just change their outlook on it, what's important. And not that they're not great, they're extraordinary. And you were asking me about poster children the last time we talked, but we have one person who never took time off and takes more vacation, does more for himself, has lost 65 pounds. It's just, he's amazing. But he stopped buying into this, that I have to be on the call 24/7 for these people to make sure they're going to be happy. So that's one. And then the last thing.
You go. Let me comment, and then I'll ask you the last thing.
Yeah, please.
I think what I think about there, and what I think is something that I come across a lot. I talk about the fact that that so many clubs don't have clarity around what their definition of success is, and if your club and the members of a club, or the boss you work for, or the company that owns it, or whatever it might be, if all together everyone doesn't have the same vision about what success is, then there's always going to be people pulling at the apple from a different direction, right? So it's difficult to have balance if you're not able to show that the club's being successful. It's like for every club that is success because you broke even, or a success because you have happier members because the greens are better, is success because you have a less of an employee turnover, is your success because the membership is growing, or you have less, decline of members. I mean, there's 500 ways to measure success at a club, and often they don't even have 5. Like they haven't even identified kind of 5 ways that they or it changes on a regular basis. So I think one of the things that causes stress to being a manager of a club is that we don't have a clear ability to define and to talk about the same song sheet about what is it we're trying to achieve. And if we all know we were getting there, you wouldn't be calling me at 8:00 at night, because the issue is not the hamburger that came out cold. You would understand in the grand scheme of things, if we're measuring our food and beverage, we're measuring our member satisfaction, we're measuring these things, et cetera, we know that everything's going in the right direction, hopefully, right? And so you don't have to get that phone call. So I think that defining success for yourself is as important, equally important, obviously even probably more importantly, but we also have to help our clubs and our bosses, whoever writes our paycheck, be very, very clear about what success that we have to know what their success is. Yeah. Because if we don't know how they define success, and we're off trying to chase another version of success, we're going to have a successful marriage.
I mean, it's hard to teach them how to do it if you haven't done it. And I think that's the point. I think that's my point, is that you have to own your piece of that you have to be able to be clear about what success looks like for you. And again, is it a fit? Was it a fit for me? I remember when John Furlong was running the Olympics, somebody said, "Will you join John and do that?" And I said, I would not be willing to give up my family for the commitment that it takes. And again, I admire it, and I'm so proud of everything they did, but that was not what I wanted at that stage of my family's life. And so at least I knew that about me. And so I think that's important, is that, how am I going to be super successful here? Well, it's got to be in totality. It's not just a little part of success. It's not just making the money. It's not just having the job title. It's about having a life that works in balance. And balance. And again, I don't want to say that I know how to have perfect balance, that there's perfect this amount of time for home and this amount. There's different, balance is a moving bar, because in the height of season, your balance is less. In the off season, your balance is more, or you have to find your times. Hopefully it all balances out, but you have to figure out what your version of balance is, but be vigilant in getting it.
And I think you would say, and this is I know you do this in your program, is that what you don't want to do is leave it up to chance, right? Because so many people get on the hamster wheel, and then they never consider that they're even on the hamster wheel. Like they all of a sudden it just hits them. They find, why did my family just leave me? I have no idea why my family just left me. Right. Really? Right. So you didn't see that coming? So, I think that, like you said, you got to check in. And I think we talked about this earlier on. The previous podcast was about the fact that those people that want to be aware of themselves are the ones that will be able to help others be aware of themselves and be better leaders. Like you said, do it at home. What's your third, you're going to mention your third kind of.
Well, I think my third thing, realization after being a club manager, I wish I knew then, was that to me, the greatest thing you can be is be yourself, be authentic. And I think as club managers, I think I was a pretty good actor. You are a professional actor. You've done acting, but in a club, sometimes you got to act like, you got to act a certain way for the board, and you got to act a certain way for the members, and you got to act a certain way for the suppliers, and a certain way for the staff. And you were a bit of a chameleon of trying to be what you thought every segment that you dealt with was wanting from you. And I think I wish I knew more just to be Kevin MacDonald and really own that. And when I see people in any profession, whether it's music or entertainment or CEOs, when they truly get who they are and they bring that, it's not like who else, it's not like I've spoken many times in rooms beside Greg Patterson. And I will never be Greg Patterson, and I wouldn't want to be Greg Patterson because Greg Patterson owns that. I'm going to be Kevin MacDonald, and it's a very different thing, but it's authentic. And, I think that's what people fall into is they want to be more like that person that, it's great to have some of the attributes of that person, but don't be that person. Be who you are. And I think that's what sets you apart. It's that thing that distinguishes you from everybody else. And gives you that upper hand in a way to get to own your brand, if you will, James. Is that this is what this club is, this is what this club is, but this is who I am. And this is how I treat people. This is how I interact with people. This is what I will tolerate. This is what I will not tolerate.
That's a great point, Kevin. And I think one of the things that about the authenticity thing, and I think this is, tell me if you agree with this. I think when I first got in the club business 25 years ago, whatever it was, there was this template of what a general manager of a club, looked like, talked like, acted like. And there was, we talk about the clubdom world where back in the day it was, literally a secretary, right? It was like the members, and there's countries today, the UK and other places where the members run the club, and the general manager or the club manager, so to speak, is a yes sir, no sir, get some paper kind of thing, right? So I mean, there's an interesting thing there, and I think that now you see these titles of COO and CEO, and we talk about with general managers about the fact that you lead the club, like you are that leader that is what is supposed to be consistent. The presidents come and go, the board members come and go, the strategic plan might come and go and change based on whoever's writing it. But at the end of the day, you're the authentic kind of flagship and captain of the ship. And if you're not yourself as the captain of the ship, well, then the ship's not going to be successful. It's going to sink.
Right.
Because you can't keep it up. You're not going to be able to keep up the charade forever and ever and ever. And I think that's why, like you said, it's so important we talked about this earlier on about interviewing the club as much as they're interviewing you, and making sure that, like you said, it's a fit, because if you're your authentic self, you'll end up in the right spot with the right people, with the right group.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's being aware that this is up to you. So one of the keys of coaching is accountability. And, in a lot of industries that I've been privy to working in, there's accountability is the enemy. Accountability means you're going to get punished by the boss. So you want to do whatever you can to fly under the radar and not do anything that is special, or you don't want to have any ideas because you want to survive. But I truly believe that the brilliance for anyone's career, anyone's family life, is when they understand that they are accountable. Is that when somebody's lost their job, and what's so important to me is own the part of why you lost it. Like, you can point at all these things that happened and this person and the board or the president, but you own part of it one way or the other. And until you own your part, you are not going to be brilliant. And until you own your accountability of that, this is your time to live this life. Nobody else is going to tell you have to. Nobody's going to tell you have to be great. Nobody's going to tell you have to be, average or whatever. It's up to you. And when you own that, and when that day happens, when and obviously people in leadership, there are people who are not afraid of accountability. But I think what they need to learn is they have to help their people embrace accountability. That's the essence of them learning, and them, the boss not having all the answers, but everybody being accountable for the success of the whole. And that simple piece of being accountable, taking accountability, owning it, is such a big part of success in life and in clubs. And
no, that's fantastic, Kevin. I mean, for a young person maybe listening to this podcast that's getting in the club business or sees first of all, these principles apply to any job. I mean, I would say leadership is irrelevant to the industry. These are life skills. These are people skills. These are, there's people that follow, and there's people that will lead, and there's people that want to be held accountable, and there's people that don't want to be held accountable. There's people that live to work, and there's people that work to live. I mean, you have to find your own version. Like you said, don't sign up to be a restaurant manager if you want to work 9 to 5. It's just not going to work that way. The business doesn't work that way. So those are some, and what I would take it, another step would be is don't expect to be a restaurant manager if you want to work 9 to 5, because sometimes one of the things where, as with working with younger people today, I worked for $2 an hour at 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, 10 months of the year, and if I didn't show up on the 7th day, it was looked frowned upon. It was like, what are you doing? Are you sleeping? Are you sick? Something wrong? But obviously, that's not how we manage. We have to change our perceptions on what young people want to work and what they want to do. And there's so many different things we have to keep up to all that education. I mean, that's part of Golf Industry Guru, is trying to find a different vehicle to train a group that doesn't sit in classrooms opening up textbooks. Right. They listen to things on their car. They watch videos. They watch 3-minute training videos, and they watch TikTok, and we got to find a way to train people in a different way, right? So anyway, that's fascinating, Kevin. I love your wisdom. I wanted to just ask you lastly, my last kind of question for you was, and you just shared some great things there for you. When you talked, because you obviously do in your Extraordinary Leader program and your coaching, you obviously talk to young up and coming managers. And we just talked about, not taking things personally, work-life balance, authenticity, talked about accountability. But when you talk about if you're a leader, what other people want from you, what do you think is kind of one of the number one, or whatever? It doesn't have to be number one, but when you're responsible for a team, what do you think that they want the most, whether they say it or not, or they need the most, I guess? If you want to lead a team at a club, if you want to change the culture of your club, if you want to fix a broken club, if you want to make more money at your club, if you want your members to be happier, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and you're responsible for leading a team, whether it's a department of 1 or a department of 1,000, what do you think that group, that team wants from you in leadership?
Oh, my off the top of my head answer is one word, is trust. Yeah. And I truly believe that, if you're a person who can build trust in the team, and you can build trust with your members, or trust with your customer, trust with your suppliers, trust with people. Building trust means that you need to be trustworthy. And you got to be trusting. You got to allow, I sort of come from the school that I trust people until they give me a reason not to. There's some that don't trust people until they're absolutely sure they can. But to me, when you build that environment of trust, and I love Stephen M. Covey's book that says, the speed of trust is that, when trust is there, things happen quickly. And, we talked in the last podcast about my partner, Shelley, is that, Shelley and I have been together 15 years as business partners. And if she had a meeting today and decided something for our company, she wouldn't have to consult with me, because I trust that she knows exactly how I feel. We're on such a level of trust with each other that, I could just say, hey, Shelley, I just committed to this. She'd go, okay, cool. Because we know that trust is there. Now, if the trust isn't there, everything takes a long time. Everything's a struggle. And so when you do something as a young leader that violates your trust, when you say you're going to do something, you better do it. And it's not just a nice platitude. Hey, I'm going to call you sometime. I mean, call. Follow up in real tangible ways that are going to show that you're worthy of trust. And don't do those things that are going to illustrate that you can't be trusted, obviously. But, in relationships, in clubs, in life, the building and honoring, but standing for that level of trust is key.
That's awesome. Helpful. No, that's so good. That's so good. And what I would add to it, right, is that, and you can start today, right? Like we've all, well, let me rephrase that. I've broken trust before. I know, we're fallible. We're not perfect. Correct. So I've broken trust before. The question is not when did I? The question is will I? Right. So the question is like, so just be more committed in the future. Be more committed to today. If you decide today, it's like I had the great conversation as you just did. We talked about it with our friend Ricky Potts about the commitment every day to be 1% better, right? Mm-hmm. And imagine being 365% better at the end of a year, right? It's like every day is a new day to try to be 1% better. Even if I went backwards yesterday by 1%, today's a new opportunity to be 1% better. And I think that's the same with things that you're talking about. It's like you don't have to expect of yourself to be perfect in all of these things in the past or in the future. You just got to do your best each and every day to try to make it better.
I will say that it's a lot easier to, when you build trust and you have it, the efforts you put into building trust and keeping it and in honoring it is so much more effective than trying to recapture it after you've lost it.
Yeah.
And it's an uphill battle when you've done something to break a trust. And so be careful. And for a young person, what does that even mean? Well, even if like coming 5 minutes late for a meeting or not calling back when you said you were going to call back, can I trust that this person will do what they say they're going to do? If you said you were going to do that job, did you deliver? And if you get the reputation, and if you you become credible that, hey, if I gave that assignment to James, it's done. I don't have to worry about it. It's done. Well, that's trust. That's trust. And I think sometimes we go, oh, it's no big deal. Mm-hmm. I'll get it done tomorrow. It is a big deal though. And I think we just have to be careful with that sacred trust that we have with people. As employers, do we care about them? And there's so many employers over COVID that, hey, they just blew their people out and now they can't get people. And I can tell you a number of clubs that didn't let off anybody because they, the members said, hey, they're part of our family. They're going to be whole. And these clubs are thriving, but that, with the saying we really care about you and then showing it are two different things. So,
yeah, that's awesome. Kevin, such wisdom and such great experience and such great sharing. I just want to thank you so much for being on our podcast. I think that you and I, we could keep talking for 4 more hours, and I'm going to try to bring you back again to there's so many things I wrote down on my piece of paper that I haven't even come back to get to and to talk about, because I think if one of the things that you and I have both, I think, benefited from is that we get to meet a lot of people in this business. And I always say, like, I learn from every single person that I've ever met. Like I every session I've been to, every conference I've been to, every club I've worked with, every meeting I've sat in. I mean, there's so much to learn. And you're never at the end of that journey, right? So I love the fact that you do what you do, and you help so many people. How can people get in touch with you about talking to you more about you helping their career?
Well, there's a number of ways. One is our website for our Extraordinary Leader Program, which is www.thecoachingdept.com. DEPT, short form for department. My email address is kmacdonald, kmacdonald at dccnet.com, dccnet.com. I have a toll-free number for people to call. It's 866-822-3481 and smoke signals. There's so many ways to communicate now, but those three would probably get me one way or the other. And James, listen, you know what? You and I could, and you and I have just sat and done this for, just without having microphones in front of us, and I think for young people and coming into the business, if you can get somebody's time, if you can, I have a saying that the person asking the questions is in charge. And if you can ask powerful questions, you'll be amazed who will give you the answers. And so don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, that's great advice. Kevin, as always, thank you so much. You're a wonderful, you, sir, are an extraordinary leader. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, James. And thanks for all you do for me.
Thanks for listening to the Gig Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and mostly that you learned a few things that will help you improve your business. Join us next time as we continue to bring you the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. Thanks for listening.